Have you ever wondered what it's really like to live in Hawaii? Is it really the paradise that all of these movies and TV shows make it out to be? In this video, I'll be going over some common assumptions about living here and some cold hard facts about what it's actually like to live here. And just as a disclaimer, this is my opinion and just my experience that I've been living here in Hawaii, but I think this video should give you a pretty good idea of what to expect. And speaking of things to expect, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already if you want to see more videos from this dude in Hawaii talking about personal finance, construction, and just life here in the islands. And with that, let's get into the video. So let's first start off with what everyone pictures of Hawaii. I think the first thing that people think of are the beaches. So one must think, Keenan, how do you keep that skin so silky smooth when you're out in the sun going to the beach all the time? So yes, the beaches are outstanding here. I truly didn't appreciate the value of our beaches in Hawaii until I went to the mainland and realized how cold the water is. The water's pretty clear and blue, and it's pretty warm, so you can just kind of walk in, and it's not warm for like human reasons. But despite all of that, there are people like me in Hawaii that actually don't go to the beach that much. For me, it's probably been like actually over a year since I've actually gone to the beach to just like relax or do actual beach things.
You just said actually like a lot.
Oh. Whoops. There are people that live in Hawaii that do go to the beach every weekend or pretty much any moment that they have. Whether it's going out to surf, hang out with their friends, or doing some sort of beach barbecue, things like that. But from what I've noticed, or at least the people around me, most people are spending their free time doing just like the regular tasks that people would be doing on the mainland. Whether it's staying at home and watching Netflix, or going out and going to the grocery store, or hitting the like button and subscribing to your favorite YouTube channels. Though there's so much beautiful scenery around us, we're not constantly consuming it. And if you've never been to Hawaii, the island of Oahu is actually pretty metropolitan. We have like a downtown area, we have our own Chinatown, so we do have our little concrete jungle out here. So it is nice to have that beautiful hike to go on for sunrise, or going to see some waterfall somewhere. But I think most people in Hawaii are just doing regular things. And I think it is worth noting that not all of the islands of Hawaii have active volcanoes. There's only one island in the Hawaiian island chain that has volcanoes, and that is the Big Island. So me living here on Oahu, I wouldn't be going out and spending the day at the volcano. And here's kind of like a pro tip, I guess, if anyone's thinking about visiting Hawaii. A lot of times Waikiki is known as like the central hub or the go-to place for tourism. And don't get me wrong, Waikiki's pretty cool. But when you're talking about like true beauty, scenery, beaches, things like that, honestly Waikiki is probably one of the worst places for that. And if you're actually living in Hawaii, most locals don't go to Waikiki that often.
Or ever.
But it is very good for tourism. It gives you a good kind of taste and that feel that you're on vacation in Hawaii. But I would argue that it's not like the bee's knees of what Hawaii actually has to offer. So one other harsh reality of Hawaii is that there is a high cost of living. And especially on the island of Oahu, to buy a home here is really tough. I'll throw up a graphic here of the median sales price of a home here in Hawaii. And here's some pictures of kind of what you can buy and what your money can get you in certain parts of the island. So as you can see, your dollar doesn't go very far here when you're talking about housing. And if you thought that people in Hawaii lived in grass huts, well, we don't. But even if we did have a grass hut on the market, it would probably be at least $100,000. And now the high cost of living doesn't just stop at housing. I would say that the cost of opportunity is also real here in Hawaii. A lot of people move to the mainland because there's just more opportunity for growth and higher paying jobs in the mainland. So it's kind of this weird thing where you have such a high cost of living, but a comparatively lower salary when you live in Hawaii. Construction though is one of the few industries that actually pays better in Hawaii. So if you all want to join construction. But for the most part, to live here in paradise, you're going to have to probably forego a higher salary. And then if you thought it ended there, not really. So you have a high cost of living, a lower comparative salary, and then you have one of the highest income taxes in the nation. So it's just this weird trifecta of like just really expensive living in Hawaii. So that's why when locals see that a gallon of milk is like $6 at the market, it kind of just pushes them over the edge a little bit. So if you're thinking about moving here, just be prepared. It's going to be tough for you to have like that big beautiful home, but if you're okay living a more minimalist lifestyle in just a smaller, no frills place, and you just want to enjoy the outdoor scenery and just the culture around you, you can still do that here. So kind of related to scenery, another thing is location. So Hawaii is located in a tropical area where some people I think have the perception that it's probably always sunny here. And that's not always necessarily true. So especially if you're thinking about visiting in the wintertime, don't be surprised if you get caught up in a lot of storms. A tropical climate doesn't always mean always sunny. So there will be times where the day starts off pretty sunny, rains in the middle of the day, and then becomes clear again in the afternoon. And probably about once or twice a year we get some sort of like hurricane scare. It hasn't been nearly to the severity of like what we've seen in Florida, but it is kind of just part of life living here in Hawaii. And though we are an island chain located in the middle of the ocean, you do not need a passport to go to Hawaii. We are the 50th state and part of the United States. We're just social distancing. And because of that social distance, we have to pay a lot more for shipping. So going back to kind of cost of living a little bit, imagine a world where you find all of your furniture at IKEA and you want to just ship it here to Hawaii. Don't be surprised if the shipping to Hawaii costs double the amount of what your furniture costs from IKEA. And I say that rooted in experience. It has happened. And we all can't forget about the missile alert that we had. Hawaii's location being between the United States and North Korea. So if you don't remember the news, here's a little bit of a refresher. One day a couple of years ago, all the residents of Hawaii got a text on their phone basically saying that there was an incoming ballistic missile and this was not a drill. And it, rightfully so, caused a bit of a frenzy. It was a false alarm, but it really brought to light what could happen if some of these news and rumors came true. But I do think it's important to keep in mind that most of these things only become inconveniences a few times a year. I don't think most people in Hawaii are sitting around wondering when the next missile is going to come. I'm just trying to give you all the thoughts out there. So now let's move into culture. So a lot of people think that if you're born and raised in Hawaii, you grew up there, you've been there a couple years, you are Hawaiian. You're not. I mean, look at me. I'm as Japanese as they come. And do we live here in a world where everyone is telling everybody aloha, mahalo? Do we have luau's every day? No, we don't. For the most part, our lives are pretty much the same as if we were in the mainland. But there are some like stereotypical cultural things that you'll see a lot of Hawaii people do. So like for Hawaii people, it's not called flip-flops. They're called slippers. We don't wear shoes in the house, which to me shouldn't be a Hawaii or Asian culture thing. Like, it's just gross. Your feet are outside, like near urinals, if you're men. And how can you just walk into your own home with whatever? It's fine. It's fine. Hawaii people also always reverse park. I don't know why that's a thing, but Hawaii people do it. And some people speak the language of pidgin. I don't know if it's actually a language per se, but it is very tough to understand if you don't know what's going on. So I'll give you an example. If someone were to say that something was cherry, what would you think that means? If you guessed good or acceptable, that is what cherry means. If someone were to say, okay, shoots, what would that mean? It is also similar to that is acceptable or okay, that's fine. And finally, if someone says, hey, you like scrap, what do you think that means? If you think someone is inviting you over for arts and crafts, you are sadly mistaken. They're asking you to fight. It's like, meet me in the parking lot. So it will take you a few months to kind of figure out the language when you get here. After a few months, maybe you'll get a hang of the language and you can become bilingual too. And also too, because we kind of have like our own thing going on here in Hawaii, you know, just being in the middle of the ocean and having our different cultures and our way of doing things, you're kind of shielded a little bit from what's really going on in the world. Like 2020 was a pretty bizarre year in terms of like the political and social world, and though we had some unrest here, it wasn't nearly to the level that was happening on the mainland. So it kind of is a nice place to kind of get away from all of that. And finally, and I think this is probably the most important and I think the best thing about Hawaii, is I really believe that Hawaii is the best place for you to raise a family. Hawaii is made up of a bunch of different cultures and truly embraces the idea that everyone around you is family. This may be hard for a lot of people to grasp, but people in Hawaii call each other auntie and uncle even if you're not blood related. Like the parents of the kid that you played soccer with, auntie and uncle. Even your girlfriend or boyfriend's parents, auntie and uncle. But I can't put exactly my finger on it, but just from being in the mainland with a bunch of different people, different families, just the whole vibe in Hawaii and how people interact with each other, just seems to have that different level of like companionship, love, and overall family culture. And to me, that alone is probably the main reason why I live here in Hawaii. Well, that's the end of the video. I kind of went over a lot of different things. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about, or maybe any points that you disagree with, feel free to comment below and I'll be sure to reply to you. I really enjoy the place that I live and sharing my home with everybody out there. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can join our growing family here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you on the next video.